question of how you handle the moments when maybe your personal and family life collided with your professional life.
Oh, good question. Well, because my husband's family is so traditional, so that filial piety, the respect for elder, is a paramount value. It is very difficult to say, well, I'm sorry, I can do whatever is expected from my home, I just have to go on with my career. So early on, when I first began studying back at Bryce, I was able to figure out what it is that I need to do at home, do it quickly, and then spend the rest of the day or time to fulfill my professional requirement. That led to a lot of sleepless nights, because you obviously don't have enough energy and time. But over the years, my husband had become more and more supportive, and also a lot of the things that I needed to do at home are being filled by other people, whether it's hired help or with other family members jumping in. So that allowed me a little more time to do what I want. But it is a conscientious negotiation every time. Do I spend time to do this, or do I spend time to do that? As I said, I usually do what feels right to me, and if it is something that I should be at home to do, and I'm going to have to give up something academically, professionally, I probably will make that decision.
Is there an expectation for you and your husband for your, I guess, daughter-in-law to house to do the same role that you do?
Yeah, I laugh about that because my son at one point said, yeah, Mommy, of course your daddy going to live with us. And then when you're old, I said, no. I think it'd be great if we lived near each other so that you can see each other often, but to be in the same house. And, we share everything. We share breakfast, we share lunch, we share dinner, and we see each other constantly. And I think there's maybe a little too much proximity in that sense, and I think it's really healthy if you were based to yourself. So my expectations of my daughter-in-law are very high. I mean, she's very sweet and my son is getting married in the fall. She's a very nice young lady, and she's also Chinese, and kind of half expected maybe there will be a lot of expectation on her part to be a traditional daughter-in-law, but I think I've reassured her that, this is not going to be the case.
Thank you for speaking. Were there any cultural clashes when you lived in Houston, or did you have any issues working in Taoist culture and Houston culture?
I think by the time I got to Houston, I was pretty comfortable with Western culture because I had gone to school on the East Coast. And then also I was in Washington, D.C. as a youngster, so I think there was less cultural shock. What I didn't understand earlier on is how involved parents were with children. I didn't realize, for instance, when children had their sports games, that parents usually were on the sideline cheering. I never attended any of my children's sports games. I thought I did pretty well when I attended bake sales and car washes, but things like that. And then maybe because I'm not Christian or Buddhist, so I think the church culture here is something that I'm not familiar with. And then also in my, I think in my cohort, in the parents of my children's friends, many of them are homemakers like me, but they would join things like garden clubs or junior league and other social organizations that I'm just not familiar with. So things like that, and then you learn. I mean, you learn gradually as you immerse yourself, and sometimes you have a friend who explains to you. For instance, in the South, I don't know how many of you are from the South, there are all these social activities like cotillion for children in the 7th grade. The children go out and dance together, and then when the girl reaches, I think the sophomore in university, there's something like debutante balls in the South, and what you do when you're sort of the invited or going to theater, so things like that you learn. But these are tiny little culture shocks, not major ones, I would say. Yes, and then we'll be back.
Did you ever find yourself missing Taiwan?
When I was little, I did. I missed my friends and the sights and sounds of Taiwan. But as you grow further away from school, from that time when you're 10, and as your friends also leave Taiwan, then I don't really miss it that much.
So when you
decided to apply to grad school and you came to Rice, how did your husband and mother-in-law react? Like, how did you explain to them what you were doing?
Yeah, well, my husband was very supportive. I think he kind of felt like he owed me the degree. My mother-in-law wasn't supportive. She was just basically saying, how come you didn't ask my permission? And I'm thinking, if I did, you're not going to say yes. But the redeeming situation is that for any Chinese, scholarly pursuit is always highly prized. So at least if I had gone out and, I don't know, opened a shop or a restaurant, they may say, wow, you really should not be doing this, you should be staying home. But if I said I'm going out to get my PhD, it's very hard for them to say no, because that is supposed to be an ideal pursuit for every Chinese person. So that kind of saved me.
So when your mother-in-law told you that she didn't want you to go get your PhD originally after graduation, how did you react to that? Was there an argument?
No, actually, it was a self-made decision. I did attend grad school. I was at Columbia for a year, and I went to. What happened is I actually applied to Yale right after Wellesley, and I actually got interviewed by this professor who's, I was very enamored, had lunch with him, was terrified, and didn't know what to say. But then I got interviewed with the department head, and I said to them, I'm getting married in 2 months. This was applying for September, and I was getting married in October. And I said, after I get married, my husband may be moving. And then I also plan to have children, and children come first. So the department had looked at me and said, well, Ms. Shen, we really appreciate your honesty, but based on what you said, we can't offer you a position because you may just abandon this pursuit and then we're wasting a slot for someone else. So I didn't get to Yale, but I said the same thing to Columbia, and they took me. But sadly for them, I did leave after a year. And then my husband moved to Wilmington, Delaware to apprentice with Hercules, and then I thought, well, Penn wasn't too far, so I applied again to Penn and stayed again for another year or so and couldn't finish. At that time, my mother-in-law was in Taiwan, and we weren't living together, so that was fine. But then by the third move, my husband was going to Hong Kong and Taipei. I thought briefly that I could continue studying in Taiwan, but when I realized what the family arrangement looked like, it wasn't possible. So then I just decided, I didn't argue the point, it was just move that over and study.
You mentioned the 3 W's for being on boards, the wisdom, the wealth, the work. Since you're on a lot of different boards, do you find yourself contributing differently to each board or the same?
The board composition usually is created by a matrix in any organization. And so they want people who have expertise in some field. And they also want people who can bring in wealth, in a resource in a certain way. And then they have people who can bring in some other kind of an attribute to the organization. And usually I'm lumped with those people who are going to give you wealth. And so either I have to contribute myself or I have to tap into my friends. And so pretty soon your friends will stop answering phone calls. But also there are organizations that they will tap into institutional memory. For instance, I was on the St. John's board for 8 years, from late 1990s to early 2000. And then they asked me to go back again, claiming that I have institutional memory because St. John's had undergone some changes in their headmastership and maybe some other, and so perhaps since I was there earlier on, I was able to contribute some of that. And right now, I'm on a committee that's going to look at the direction of the school's education. So certain areas I am able to contribute other than try to bring some resources to the organization. But organizations are pragmatic, they need to survive, they need to grow, so they will ask people based on certain needs that they have.
And how much time would you say each board takes?
It can take a lot, so you have to be very careful of your own time. And you can basically decide on which organization you want to be with. For instance, I really like St. John's because the board members are all very people who really want the good of the organization. So all of us put our ego at the door and we go in and we solve the problem. So there, because it is also a small organization and I feel like I can really make a difference, then I spend quite a bit of time. I do try to attend every board meeting, which I think there are 7 a year, and I'm on the committee, and if I'm on the committee, I'll try to go as much as I can. Certain other organizations, like Houston Ballet, which is a much bigger organization that have hundreds of board members, then you don't have to, you know that the organization will be fine, even if you weren't there all the time, then you just choose that if you're really busy that you just don't go, and then you try to catch up when you can. So you really have to manage because you can just lose all your time and have them out